And we are live with our 62nd episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter, joined by my co-host, Seth Law at Seth Law on Twitter. Seth, say hi.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Once again, this is number 62. We're joined this week by some of the organizers for Global AppSec DC. I still have a problem with that, Abdullah and Ben, the fact that it's not AppSec USA anymore. I can't seem to wrap my head around it, right? Even though we already had Global AppSec Tel Aviv, like they just changed the name on us, right? But we're joined by Abdullah and Ben. We'll get into that shortly. Those guys, what they're doing over there and their backgrounds. But welcome to the show. This week, I don't think we have a lot of announcements. Ken and I will be at Black Hat EU in London in December. We're teaching our Seth and Ken's Excellent Adventures in Secure Code Review course once again. And hopefully there's a couple other places that are coming up that, we've got the training in at other events. Speaking of which, Abdullah, right?
We've got AppSec Day in Melbourne too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I shouldn't discount that with Julian. We've been accepted there. I think, Ken, you're speaking there as well. My talk got picked up as well.
Yep.
So
Chris Gates will be.
Chris Gates. Yeah.
Yep. We're gonna do so we did all these DevOps talks before. We've been doing them since I think
since Britney Spears was relevant.
Yeah, for a long time. And for this one, we're gonna actually, instead of talking about research, we're gonna be talking about what happened in our own professional work lives, stories from our experiences of where DevOps stuff went wrong. So it should be good.
Let Ben and I know if you want to dry run that at OWASP Nova.
Absolutely.
I actually did respond to Ben. So yeah, totally.
Yeah, we're trying to coordinate.
Yeah. So I don't think there's anywhere else, Seth, that I can think of that we are going to be.
No, I mean,
that's official right now.
Yeah, I'll be at DEF CON. I am still on the info booth doing the hacker tracker stuff. That new version should be out within the next couple of weeks for this year. And then hopefully we're making it easier so people can load other conferences in there as well, like local B-Sides events and things like that. It's slowly getting better. Anyway, so you can find us obviously online at any point, at Absolute AppSec, or send us an email. Get your questions in now for Ben and Abdullah, whether that's in the Slack channel or on the YouTube live page. And we'll be monitoring that as we go throughout the day. But to kick things off, we are finally getting to the AppSec Minute today. And Ken's going to do that. I think we're on number 2 in Portswigger's top 10 web hacking techniques of 2018, if I remember correctly, right?
Yep. No, this will be another episode of Ken Explains Something Badly.
Ken explains something badly. So we're going to do a series on that, just short ones, right? Between that and Logical Ruins InfoSec, we should be good. So, number 2, what is it? Practical web cache poisoning? I think I've got
it. And I mean, it's from James Kettle, who, works at Portswigger/Burp. He announced, so he basically he has this sort of whole series of things that he kind of shows you can do when you've got cache poisoning. So to sort of, there's a couple things. First, we have to describe what that is, and then talk a little bit about the tool that he has to help with that, and then maybe give some practical examples that he shows on this article. And speaking of the article, I'll put the link in right now to. Oh wait, you already dropped it. Sorry, my bad. Cool. So if you could just drop that in the YouTube live chat too. Yep. So the basic gist is, so if you're familiar with CDNs where content is distributed and cached, so requests are cached, right? So the idea being certain things, and we talked a little bit about this before when we were talking about edge side inclusion and talking about the concept of caching, but some things don't change, right? You make a request off, page comes back, response comes back from the web server. And instead of having the next 100,000 users hit the web server to make that same request and have that app do the process that request and send a response back. If it's not changing, then the theory is, okay, cool. Well, like, let's just cache that and just serve that to people when they request it, and it won't even hit like the web server. That is the general gist of caching. And the idea is sometimes you have like, one of the things he talks about in this article, sometimes you have XSS that you can't necessarily distribute to other people. So you have like an effective XSS attack vector, like the application is vulnerable to XSS. But again, like you, for whatever reason, can't distribute it to other people. So this is a good time, if you have cache poisoning, to basically poison a page and have that rendered back to people, so that the XSS attack payload is sent out to those folks. So we talked just a little bit about caching. The tool is, the tool name is, I'm going to explain what it does. Sorry, I just had it in front of me. I think it's Param Miner. Yeah, Param Miner. And let me put that link in real quick. So what Param Miner does is, and thank you for the compliment, Ryan Reed. Appreciate that. So what Param Miner does is it basically finds out what is considered unkeyed input. And unkeyed input means that you can change that data and it will not affect like the response that's cached, right? So for instance, if I send a request to / I don't know, test, right? And maybe there's a parameter that it accepts, or there's something it accepts that if it changes, like it doesn't matter, because the same, like that same request to / test will be cached. Why that's important is, so that's kind of the idea of Param Miner, is it sends all these, it's basically trying to figure out where stuff is cached and where you can get that reflected back. And then also, more importantly, is figuring out how, like, it injects these random values into the request so that it doesn't actually poison other people, because you could very quickly, through testing, start poisoning a bunch of users. So if you don't want to do that, this is a good tool for that. So now that you know what is considered unkeyed input, and you find like, okay, let's say this unkeyed input is reflected back as like script alert, whatever. Okay, cool. You've just found XSS that can be cached, because, like, we'll say into the when you make the request to / test, pass in a parameter value that maybe has the script alert, that gets echoed back in the response, but it's not used as like the cache, as that like a key to cache. So just / test is. So now anybody that sends a request to / test will have that like JavaScript sent back to them in the response, because that has been cached, if that makes any sense at all. It's a little hard to do without a whiteboard. And we do have the article here. And again, it's another episode of me explaining things terribly, but hopefully that does help. So using the concept of caching, using Param Miner to find out like where interesting keys might be. And then, actually injecting your like, let's say XSS payload. Now that's the example of XSS, but real quick before we go on, there's other things that, he shows. I think one of the interesting things was manipulating the cache key so that you can request internal resources. It almost sounds like SSRF. So he calls it route poisoning, and you'll find it on that page that Seth linked. So go down to route poisoning. You'll see an example of that. It shows it on goodhire.com.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else I wanted to. Oh, go ahead.
No, I know we always kind of jump on XSS, right? Just because of the payouts, and it's pretty easy to see. But I almost feel like some of those others, like the route poisoning stuff, is more dangerous. Just overall, as far as, hey, maybe I can use that to get access to those internal resources or other. SSRF in general, like injection of those types, feels like it's more risky, or there's more threat there than something like cross-site scripting. But that's just me. I mean, like if I was rating that, like if I found it in some app. Ken, have you ever dealt with this kind of cache poisoning? I mean, I know you're at GitHub. You guys obviously have some sort of CDN in place. Is that something that you guys have discussed?
I wouldn't say, I don't think that I've seen, okay, I know I haven't seen any cache poisoning being reported through our bounty, and not something we typically see discussed. Doesn't mean it's not prevalent elsewhere for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, it's something else that should be, you got to pay attention to, right? If you're using any sort of CDN and how you're actually caching stuff. So go read the article. It's pretty good. James Kettle always has good feedback and good research, right? There's a lot coming out of Portsmouth there that's very interesting.
Yeah, the part of that's interesting is also it doesn't seem like it's all that easy to fix either. I mean, it's once it exists, it's a bit challenging. You really have to spend some time trying to figure out how you want to architect the solution to fix the issue.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, it's not necessarily your code. It's like the CDN itself and how it caches things, and you got to make sure that it plays nicely together, right? There's that again, like I feel like a lot of application security is weird edge cases, right?
Yeah.
And this is again one of those weird edge cases where you've got two different systems that are acting exactly how they're supposed to act, and somebody can take advantage of them.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so that's web cache poisoning. All right, so I guess we dive in and we introduced Abdullah and Ben. We've known Abdullah for years. Ken and I have. This is the first time I've seen Ben face to face. So hi, Ben.
Hey, how's it going?
These guys are organizing, or they're on the committee to organize Global AppSec DC. And maybe what we'll do is just introductions first off. Ken, did you have some background that you wanted to do on both of them?
No, I was just going to mention that Abdullah has definitely spoken at various OWASP conferences, and both Ben and Abdullah run the OWASP Nova, so our local to where I'm at, Northern Virginia, local OWASP chapter, which has been, not to toot you all's horn, but one of the better attended, well ran, I would say, OWASP meetups. So very good, a very well run meetup.
All comes down to the pizza.
People show up for food. Is that what you're saying?
Chick-fil-A is the key. If you tell them Chick-fil-A is there, they will come.
Yep, definitely can attest to that.
Cool. Well, yeah, let's have each of you give just a little bit of background, what you're currently doing, maybe, just a couple minutes. Abdullah, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently a application security architect at Appian. So Appian is a software company that specializes in a low-code platform for developing enterprise applications. In my role, basically what I'm doing is I am helping to build the internal application security program for the organization. Everything from SaaS, DAS to threat modeling, as well as doing a OWASP SAM assessment on the organization and kind of evaluating the maturity of the program. Ben, you want to go for it?
Yeah, sure. So I am an application security analyst at Invisium, and we are a local to this area, Northern Virginia, DC, consulting firm that does assessments on applications. It can be the applications themselves and the source code. It can be the cloud infrastructure and architecture. We also do some work in the mobile environment as well. So it's really kind of a wide slate of the assessments that are performed. And then we go through and really give good guidance on how to resolve those issues. So for instance, I'll have 2 weeks. I'll get, it's a typical assessment. I'll get a source code, I'll get a URL, maybe an account, and just sort of have at what I can within the application. And then it's what can I find? Based on what I can find, how would that be resolved? And then moving forward from there.
Cool. And Ben, just because I know like we haven't ever really chatted before, so what did you do before you were a consultant? Like, what brought you into AppSec specifically? We always find it interesting because everybody's path is different, right?
Right. So this will be a really wide range of years, but I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible. So I graduated, about a decade ago with an engineering degree, and I got a job at a company that was expecting engineering work down the line, but at the moment, all they had was development work. So from there, I started, I said, yeah, I'll come in and I'll do this development work, but I really want to get back into that engineering stuff. And then they had an opening in a training program for security. And so one thing just led to another from there. And then I got certified through SANS. And then, 10 years later, I'm doing almost entirely security work. So it's just sort of one thing led to another that fell in line for me.
Cool. So from an engineering, sorry.
Mechanical engineering.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
I mean, we see a lot of EEs, but not as many like mechanical engineers in the development space. So.
True, but again, it comes back to that development side where I had kind of an affinity for it in school, and then just sort of grew that into a career, and then just kept training until I ended up in security.
Cool. Ken, did you have a different question there?
No. Same question. But I was curious to ask also, like with SANS, what SANS certification did you go to?
Oh, I had a lot when I first, this was like a massive program that the company was holding. So at one point I had like 6 or 7 of them. I started off with Security Plus, the GPen I think I still have, the Incident Handler, there was one in Forensics. So kind of just a wide slate.
Was there one for AppSec that you took that you would recommend?
There was. I didn't actually take it at that time, and it's been years since I took that course, so I don't honestly remember what it was, but they did have a good web application one. But I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Ah, sweet. Well, no worries. Abdullah, I did have a question for you, which was like, since you're fairly new to fairly new to your role, like what has been your plan to sort of get things off the ground? Like what are some of the, just for those that maybe are coming in fresh to a new program as well, what are some things that, you're focused on, maybe that they could take away and use themselves?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think the best thing to do really is do a SAM assessment, and you can do a SAM self-assessment, or you can bring in a third-party assessor. What that does is it breaks down the entire organization. It takes a look at the various components of the maturity of a software assurance program, and it gives you a really in-depth look at what the organization is doing well and what the organization isn't doing well. You can take the deficiencies and essentially create a project of milestones and timelines and things like that on how you want to address those deficiencies. Within SAM, the scorecard, you can even do what if scenarios of if you were to kind of boost this or implement this, how much of an impact would it have on the score? How much would it help increase it? And so basically you can create a multi-year plan off of what you found in the SAM of the roadmap for this application security program. So I highly recommend everybody that's interested or have just come in to it, just for a worthwhile exercise, do the SAM. The other thing that SAM is going to do is, if you're new to the organization, you're going to get to meet a bunch of folks. You're going to get to meet the people and start these relationships with individuals that you're going to be working really closely with, where they're going to have to trust you and you're going to have to trust them. And so you establish those relationships, and you kind of get you get that working relationship started. So I think for a lot of reasons, SAM is really the place to start, and then you can just take it from there.
Did you reach out to Brian Glass for any of that? Brian, he's a professor, I believe, at college. Yeah. Were you able to reach out to him at all? Ask any questions?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in constant contact with Brian. Him and I talk quite frequently. I learned how to do SAM assessments from Brian. Him and I did a bunch together, and so that really helped me understand, kind of how to evaluate a program. And so, yeah, I'm taking a lot of the things that I did with Brian and I and kind of applying it toward what I'm doing right now.
That's why it's so awesome to go between consulting and, we've talked about this several times on the podcast. It's nice to bounce sometimes, like do consulting for a little bit, then go blue team, maybe go back to consulting, and having that mix, it just gives you like, because there's totally different perspectives there. But in your case, you're able to take some of the, seeing different, because I know we'd worked together. I think Seth might've mentioned at the beginning, like we all worked together, and you had done a lot of these sorts, basically like helping people manage and run a large scale program. That was one of the things you had done when we worked together. But it sounds like, you've got some experience from going in and doing these open SAM assessments with Brian on different companies.
Yeah, that's definitely a trend of individuals moving from consulting into internal teams and vice versa. I was at a point in my career, the majority of the time I have done consulting. And so I wanted a situation where I could, really just focus on one set of problems, focus on one set of tasks, and kind of, help improve upon an existing program and just kind of focus on that. And so, yeah, I'm really happy to have that opportunity.
Nice. Very awesome. Seth, did you have any questions on that?
Not necessarily. I was like, I did wonder, how's it going so far? Like, how do, like when you're implementing SAM, right? Or you're, conducting that, maturity, like the interviews and everything that goes along with that. Mm-hmm. How are you, how are you finding the reception? I mean, I know it varies from organization to organization, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously the more mature that they are, the more receptive they are to actually answering questions about their security practices and everything like that. How have you found the uptick there at Appian as you've been, trying to implement it?
So, the great thing here, and we've all been in the consulting boat, and we've all seen our share of clients that fall on either end of the spectrum of being very receptive to being, feeling like you're the enemy walking in there. And the great thing is that corporate culture is something that you really can't teach. It's really not something that can just change overnight. And so, walking into an organization that has this amazing corporate culture, it makes things so much easier, where everybody is just so, receptive, where, okay, yeah, we may or may not do something, but cool that you're the security person. Let's have a conversation, and let's work toward something. We've all been in clients where, we get on site, and I remember, I think Ben can tell the story better than I can, because it happened to Ben, but he got there and he was given a lawn chair to sit on. And a lawn chair and a picnic table.
Yeah, there were park benches that they I don't understand how they ate on them, because they were basically for like kids. But that was what myself and one of our other guys, Dwayne, were working out of for that week. And then, after the first day, they sort of pulled over a second chair. But yeah, those were kind of rough.
So was it one of those ones that's only like 2 feet off the ground?
Yeah, pretty much. It was a full-size person, but it was definitely very, very low.
Question: was there Play-Doh?
No. This wasn't really a kid-friendly space, so I don't know why they had the benches there. But I guess people ate lunch on them when they brought the food in.
And they were playing ping pong in the background, right?
Yeah, that too.
You guys were trying.
And there was a pool table too.
Where is this? I mean, where were you doing an assessment
Should
at?
we publicly shame? Yeah.
I'd rather not. But it was a West Coast customer, so.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
So, so the first time Ken and I met, right? Like Like we just, so like this is way back in the fishnet days. Like I had just hired him on and we had to go on site for a client, but the client didn't want us on site. Like we went on site for 2 weeks and we never went to the client site once. We spent the whole time in the hotel at the, like at their like, conference room there, because they're like, oh, well, we want you here, but we don't really want you here. I mean, so the same sort of thing.
And the funny thing is they had to pay to send us home for the weekends. Like that was the company policies. We don't stay there for the weekend. So 2 weeks in a row, we had to fly there, fly back home, and then, fly back and sit there in this, I don't know, was it like a Ramada or something like that? That's, miles and from the HQ, but within the same town. And we just, just sat in a conference room and never went on site to the actual client.
I never even met our contact face to face, or maybe we did at lunch one day, but I think, having a, nice kids bench, but probably takes the cake a little bit. So
yeah, that definitely takes the cake.
I don't know. Having the bench there is still, it's questionable whether or not that's better than not having any space at all. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the hotel is probably comfier.
Yeah. This is our list of priorities. Oh, you get the bench. Wow.
Well, they did have ping pong and a pool table, so it can't be that bad, right?
Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah, there's all kinds of crappy situations you come across in consulting, weird things. And this is the fun one too, is like, just going to these random little small towns you never thought you'd go to, and you didn't know they existed. I've definitely done that, where I'm just like, where am I? What is this? So good times.
Good times.
But you learn a lot. So
yeah, you definitely do, right? Seeing a lot of different things. I mean, it helps, like, Abdullah, now that you're back in that corporate situation, right? Being able to take that experience and apply it at some new place makes a big difference.
Yeah, I can fully appreciate security-minded corporate culture and willingness to kind of adapt and change and evolve and progress. That's not something I take for granted at all.
Yeah,
culture is huge.
Yeah.
You have to interview. Yeah, like when you do your interviews to go somewhere to build especially if you're building a program, like those interviews are crucial to find out like how the execs really feel, and because that's what matters. Obviously, is from the top and how that spreads out to the creates the culture. So that's a critical thing to do when you're interviewing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Do we want to talk, Seth, do we want to shift over to how to run a conference and meetup?
Yeah. Let's talk through that. Like I'm pretty interested, especially on the meetup side. I know you guys are running that successful OWASP chapter there. Me and a couple of the other guys here in Salt Lake City have been talking about our OWASP chapter and how like dysfunctional it actually is. So maybe let's start there, and then we can talk into conferences as well. Like I have helped with like B-Sides and like Hack West in the past, but it'd be interesting to get your take on this like national conference, because I know, Abdullah, you were involved with it last time around. It was in DC, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of another level. Obviously I do like the hacker tracker stuff for DEF CON, but that's so like small pieces compared to running the conference itself. So so let's start with just like the local chapter, right? I mean, Abdullah, are you the actual chapter lead now, or is that you, Ben, or who's actually running that?
It's been both of us.
Yeah.
In combination.
Yeah. If you want to talk about the local chapter, Ben, go for it.
Sure. So honestly, well, up until recently, we had a really perfect space for where we would meet.
Is that like a sponsored space? Is that what?
No. We sort of fell into it.
It was
this open.
I know how you fell into it.
It was
because you're looking at how you fell into it.
Right. So there was kind of a space where one person had at one point worked in the building, and years and years later, we were still using their community room for to host our meetings, which has been absolutely fantastic because it's a kind of a free space that nobody was using. So all you have to do is just bring in guests, bring in food, bring in people. But we have one place that we can consistently go to and congregate at. I think currently they're going through renovations, but at our last meetup, we had there, I was unaware of this. You were still allowed to reserve rooms, and I show up, and there's just a wall where a door used to be.
I saw that. I saw that pic you posted.
So we kind of had to scramble there. There was apparently a conference room in the basement, which the people who were in the building were nice enough to lend out to us, as long as we obviously took care of it. But it means that now, for the near future at least, we'll try and find a place. But honestly, managing those, it all comes down to our community. So finding really helpful people and making those connections and then just bringing them into our chapter. Everybody I talk to in the industry has been extremely helpful. They're always willing to donate their time and support and whatever we need to further, the knowledge sharing, the education. And they, show up and have a wonderful talk. Or if you're at a conference and you see a wonderful talk, you get somebody's business card, you talk to them and just invite them back. I mean, that's how I've gotten a couple of people this year to come in and speak.
So how does it become an OWASP official sort of meetup? I'm curious about that.
You are asking the wrong person. Abdullah, you want to handle that? Because I'm a fresh blood there.
Well, and the reason I bring that up, I want to clarify the reason. The reason I'm asking that is, well, obviously for other people to know, but the other reasons, like, because you got to have funds, right? Because sometimes you all have to sort of like cover some costs of a speaker. Or it's to like, help with, contributing funds to whatever, like a OWASP thing event. And then, you've got to have presumably some designated leads and maybe some chapter rules or something. I mean, like, I don't really know, but I'd imagine it's more than just like, hey, I want to do a meetup. Like, we're done. That's it.
So you need to have a sponsor for new chapters. You need to coordinate with OWASP Global, and they will, kind of look at making sure that, if there's another chapter that's like 5 miles away, they're gonna say, hey, why don't you just go kind of join that other chapter? But if there's an area and there's enough of an interest, and you're able to have a sponsor. And you apply and request for that chapter, they'll let you stand up the chapter. I believe they'll give you seed money, not like a crazy amount, but enough to get started, to kind of get you on your feet. The interesting thing is a lot of OWASP chapters, they'll do quarterly meetups. There's not a huge amount that are doing monthly meetups the way Ben and I are, the way really OWASP Nova has always been. I think our biggest challenge, or at least in my opinion, Ben, you can kind of say what your biggest challenge is really getting quality speakers that have something interesting to present, and that is also not a sales pitch. OWASP is a nonprofit. So, our professional, like what we do in our day jobs, has to be separate from what we do for OWASP. And so, under no circumstances are we okay with people coming in and kind of giving a sales pitch on a product. If it's a product or a tool of some kind, there has to be an open source version that the community can generally benefit from. So, Ben and I will kind of reach out to various folks and kind of get those talks going and schedule them out. But oftentimes we have to be careful, especially with folks that we don't personally know, because it's kind of that, oh, well, I'm kind of here to sell something, and it's like, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, thing is though, like, I think we should make the distinction, because there's no. It's different when you come there and you've got some interesting research and you say, hey, I work for so-and-so, and maybe it's even on your slides at like a footer or something like that, versus saying like, here's my product that we're selling, and here's all of the whole talk is on like this tool that you have to buy. Like, right. That'd be an overt sales pitch. Whereas, and I think this is an important distinction, because like, I'd imagine financially the chapter can't support every month flying out somebody. So sometimes, presumably, somebody, says, okay, I've had this talk scheduled, I have this talk built. I'll come out there. You don't have to pay my expenses, but like I'm going to mention who I work for. I feel like that's a normal trade-off that you see. It's like, okay, cool. Like you're paying for your expenses. Don't sit here and talk about selling the product the whole time, but it's absolutely fine. Like if your company's paying for you to come there, like,
Yeah.
so, at least that's my interpretation. I don't know if that's,
And a couple of times we've actually had it line up perfectly. So I've gotten Johannes Ulrich from the ISC, the SANS Internet Storm Center, and he happened to be teaching a course in the area, so at Reston Town Center, which is right near where we hold our meetings. And so he was teaching a week-long course, and then I just reached out to him and asked if, one of the days afterwards, if he'd mind just giving a 1-hour talk. So he was already in the area. It was a conference itself, so they had already provided all the food, and they were in a hotel. So all we had to do was just stay after for an hour, a little bit later in the day, and then just get people to show up. So a lot of times it kind of works with what people's schedule is. And also coordinating just in the area too, because we alone in DC, Virginia have some fantastically capable security professionals who are also wonderful speakers. And so they are, willing to fight traffic and come out and talk with us too. So
what are the keys to cultivating like a good crowd, a good attendee? What are some of the things you guys focus on to cultivate, like having the right sort of you know what I mean? When I say right, I mean like, attendees that are engaged, positive, obviously that's not, coming to, I hate when people do this. There's often, since we've all been to a lot of different meetups, I hate that there's usually one person who you cannot get rid of, who is just the most antagonistic person towards speakers. I've seen that before. Really hasn't happened to me personally too much, but I've seen it happen to other people. And it's like, those are the folks, when I say like the right kind of people, like you don't want people that are just outright dicks, basically. Like,
Well, luckily we haven't had to deal with that. We do get a lot of people who might ask a lot of questions, and then it just becomes a matter of cutting them off just because of time restraints. But I personally have never had to deal with somebody like harassing anybody, any of the speakers, or really pushing them in a given way. And honestly, in situations that might arise from like this back and forth, or just one person continually pestering them, a lot of times it's the speaker themselves is adapted, and they can say like, oh, well, we'll just talk with this later, or let's get back to the focus of the talk, or something along those lines. So I don't think I've ever really had to step in and stop somebody, and in any situation that might come from that, it was handled by the speaker themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, like I said, you guys have a really good group, and I'm curious what all you do to promote that group.
So yeah, we have a core group of folks that will pretty much come out every month, regardless of topic and speaker. And then we have another kind of subset of groups that will come out based upon the speaker and the topic. So when we have like somebody from Nova Hackers come out, kind of the Nova Hacker crowd comes out, the offensive security crowd comes out. If we have a language specific or more of a developer centric talk, then you kind of have some of the dev groups come out. And so it's kind of that core group, and then just kind of the groups that pivot around it that'll kind of come out. So subsets. And Meetup has been really influential. It's just such an easy way to get the message out, notify and manage things, post things, and communicate with the community directly. People who have questions or unsure of something. Ben and I get messages all the time, and most of them are not spam. And so, we're able to directly interact. And I mean, Ben, how many people do we have? Like a couple thousand?
Yeah, on the Meetup group, I believe so. It's well over 1,000. Let me check.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're at 2,000 plus 2,120 members.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so, yeah, you get a lot of variation. I mean, it's great to see new people come out. It's great to see, the same folks come out because, it means that we have interesting topics that people keep coming back. And then we have interesting topics to where new people are interested in something and want to come out for the first time.
Yeah.
And
You guys always have really good speakers. Like you've, I mean, definitely I've driven out more than once because I'm just like, that's a really interesting person that you would normally have to go to a conference to see speak, and you have them regularly as speakers. So that's super impressive. Do you have to report, do you have to report to the OWASP mothership, so to speak? Do you do a quarterly financials or anything like that? Like that you have to, I have no idea how that works. So
yeah, so every chapter has a budget. We have a fixed budget, and as long as I do a budget every year or two, I think. And so as long as, those chapter funds are allocated for various areas, just kind of make sure everything is accounted for. And so, our budget goes toward food. It goes toward, in the case that we end up having to fly somebody out, and just some general supplies and things like that for the chapter. So for instance, when we normally have a cooler in that original room, but we didn't have that room, so we needed a way to keep our drinks cold. So I had to run out to CVS and buy a ginormous cooler, and so I had to expense that. So that's a chapter fund.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what are the biggest challenges that you guys have, right? Just in running the chapter, what do you think those are?
I mean, honestly, the biggest
no
thing
challenges. It's all easy.
No. It's going to sound weird saying this, but honestly, the biggest challenge is weather. You can get a perfect candidate lined up, and this is year round, really. So there might be a really terrible rainstorm that sets off traffic up and down 495. So that cuts off, half the people who are planning on showing up. Or you might have just a massive snowstorm where we need to make a decision on whether or not we delay, or whether, what happens that way. So the biggest challenge I've always had is just finding a way to get everyone to the location.
Yeah, Seth, I don't know if I've mentioned this to you, but the weather here is bananas. It's like yesterday, it was sunny, hot, and then at 7 o'clock, to Ben's point, I was driving and to go to I was just 8 minutes away from this place, from between my house and this place, and all of a sudden just this flash flood hit right in the middle of a sunny day, and then it was gone in 10 minutes. It's just it's banana. It's a lot like Texas weather. I think it's similar in some ways, except for we get the snow like you mentioned in the winter.
Yeah, and it's not just
No, that's interesting, right? Just getting people out. I mean, because I've been all across the country speaking at meetups and other stuff, right? And it's always crazy to get down to Silicon Valley and go speak at a developer meetup there, and then just the pure numbers of people that show up or sign up to be there is crazy, right? And it their whole problem is making sure that the crowd is really interested in the topic, because everybody is just jumping from, hey, this is what I do at night because this is what feeds me every night, right? There's things like that go on, that as opposed to, traffic. I can understand that, having been to DC, just traffic and getting places is you have to plan 4 hours in advance, right? Just to, make it 10 miles. So
yeah.
Yeah, and we used to
Seth just dealt with this, by the way.
yeah.
We used to at one point record the meetups, and we used to even broadcast them.
Mm-hmm.
But first off, it was kind of a pain to do it, and second of all, the part of the meetup, one of the main parts of the meetup is the meetup itself.
Yeah,
it's the conversations that happen before and after the actual talk. It's the being within the community and speaking to individuals within the community and the relationships that you establish. And so we kind of felt that that's one of the strongest parts of it, is to have people come out and see each other in person. I know us devs and AppSec folk don't like to go anywhere, and kind of stay in our houses in the dark, but we got to go out once in a while and put on a clean shirt and
you got to put on pants.
Yeah,
brush your teeth, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, for what's worth, some of our meetups actually help with that because you have a place to go in between work to delay fighting rush hour. So, we're right there in that tech quarter, and we definitely get some good pool of brilliant people from that Reston area.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And I was telling Seth, I'm like, you need to drive after 7 p.m. Don't bother before. And you're right. Like if you're starting your meetup at 6:30, something like that, or even 7, it's like when you're done with that, it's good reason to go and skip traffic. That's so.
And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, what I was gonna say is the other thing is so I've been running the chapter now for I think this is my 5th year, and so we've benefited just from the area and the fact that the OWASP chapter, this Northern Virginia chapter, has been around for a really long time, and they are very well established, and just the DMV area that we live in is a very tech centric area. So all of those things makes our chapter just kind of on its own very strong.
Yeah. And I always think about the cadence too, right? The fact that you guys are doing it regularly every month, like people get used to that idea that, it's just, they check it. Even if they don't show up every month, it's, hey, I know that there's always going to be one next month that doesn't necessarily get, canceled or whatever that often. So, I mean, personally, I can see how that would help. That's one of the big complaints that I've had locally is, hey, the chapter might meet or it might not, and there's not a lot of good communication, and there needs to be some changes basically for the local chapter that I've got, but hence all the questions. So
no, that's fair.
So based on our RSVPs, Ben, what's the percentage that we do for food? Is it 50% or what?
About that, yeah, 50, maybe 40. Just because we have a large number of people who are, like you said, interested in the event and will RSVP as yes, but they don't necessarily show up, or something might come up the day of. So I typically only estimate about 40% of the people showing up.
Okay.
Because I made the mistake during my first few times and ended up purchasing way too many pizzas and way too much food.
Yeah.
So
I can see that.
Interesting.
So cool. Let's I think because we always say this goes by quick. We've only got like 13 minutes left. We'll say, we can go a little bit over for sure. But I think we should probably talk about, so Seth, you said it's global. I didn't even know that. It's Global AppSec DC, not AppSec USA.
Yeah. That's
okay.
A lot of the fallout from last year.
AppSec conferences are now. Yeah.
Well,
Did they reach out to you all, or do you reach out to them for saying we're interested? Or how does that work?
They reached out to us based upon the success of 2016.
Humble brag.
I mean, 2016 was great. I mean, we had a great conference. Everybody involved did a great job and put in a lot of time and effort. I think it was a success. It came together pretty well. But they reached out to us. They've changed the model a little bit. But OWASP can be a bit inconsistent because there was some changeover there in the middle of kind of planning or the early stages of the conference. So, but speaking with the global board, what they had told me was they wanted to change it from USA and EU for AppSec conferences to just AppSec global events. And they did that because they didn't want, or they wanted the flexibility essentially to be able to do a conference anywhere in the world. And so, Global AppSec DC, Global AppSec Tel Aviv. I believe there's going to be a Global AppSec event in Amsterdam. So they just wanted the flexibility to kind of have it wherever.
That makes sense. It makes sense as a change. I mean, so let's say they reach out to you. What are the next steps? Like, can you guys give us sort of a high level on, all right, we've said we're going to do a conference. Go. Like how many volunteers core volunteers do you need? How do you go about booking a hotel? Like what are the things you have to start thinking about once you and tasks you have to start delegating? Like keep it at high level, low level as you want. Just super curious.
So I jotted a bunch of notes on this. So I guess I'll go through it, and then I guess like Ben, just chime in and tell me
Sure.
if if I forgot something. So first and foremost, as early on, get somebody who is involved in promotions of some kind. So advertisers, marketing, whomever. We are not that. It's difficult to get the message out to various people in the community to kind of drive up CFP submissions, sponsorship, ticket sales, etc. So the first thing that we start off with is kind of picking venues and dates. So going to a bunch of different venues, speaking with the locations, and ironing out dates. We took those dates back, venue and the dates back to the board. And so the board will, take a look to see whether or not it works. Based upon the cost of the venue, you've got to be able to have a budget to allocate costs for food, venue, prices of tickets, etc. Based on that, you're going to have to figure out tracks, how many can run concurrently, how many training sessions you can run concurrently. Also, how many other activities can you do concurrently? Lightning talks, CTFs, various project summits, etc. Get the website up as quickly as you can. Talk with the committee about having a general theme, and maybe not even a general theme, but just a general direction for your tracks ahead of time before you open up the CFP and CFTs. And then based upon that, you kind of want to target your keynotes. We've been really fortunate. Our keynotes, we have 4 keynotes this year. James Wickett, Caroline Wong, and Ben, you want to go over the other 2?
Yeah, sure. So we have Vandana Verma, and then we have a keynote who's working within the government. So we're trying to cultivate to the strengths of our general area by bringing in, some people who might face different challenges than your average corporate security risks.
Totally different threat profile for government in a lot of cases than commercial.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of different outcome too,
yeah.
Or impact.
So once you open up the CFP and CFT, you have timelines for that. You want to have a really good sized group of individuals who are on the review committee, folks that know the subject matter pretty well to be able to review a CFP or a CFT and kind of grade it, with a level of certainty. We decided that we're going to have about 4 to 5 people reviewing each and every single submission. So depending on how many submissions you have, you can kind of see that number kind of balloons. So you want a very good core of consistent reviewers working on that committee. Mm-hmm. Once the review period is over, you want to open up ticket sales, and that's really where promotions come in, because you're going to have your keynotes lined up and you're going to have a general idea of your tracks and the speakers that are going to give talks within those tracks. You want to have, at that point, your volunteer signups open up. We need an army of volunteers. In 2016, we had Mike McBride, who I can't say enough about how amazing of a job Mike did. He was the day of coordinator. He volunteered for that position. So he wrangled all of the tracks across training and the conference. He wrangled all of the volunteers and was able to assign them jobs and responsibilities. He took care of all that stuff, and I can't say enough about how great of a job Mike did during the conference. And so then the other thing is you want to make sure like your AV, screens, projectors, lapel mics, or handheld microphones, dongles. I mean, I can't tell you, there was with Max moving over to USB-C, people kind of scrambling for USB-C adapters, and people were kind of walking away with them. So we had to make sure we had plenty. And then the other thing is, and OWASP kind of does this part, but it kind of goes without saying, having a good setup for your sponsors. So they create sponsorship materials, a whole sponsorship packet on kind of the benefits of being a sponsor, the tiers, the pricing, and what incentives would a sponsor get for contributing to this conference. And all the while, once again, marketing and then updating the site constantly to kind of keep that buzz going. I know that was kind of a crazy amount.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to think about, right? For sure. And I'm sure having done it in 2016, it's helpful, right? And how much direction then is OWASP giving you? Like what is kind of, because I know that the different global AppSecs are run by the local chapters, but global OWASP, right? Their OWASP mothership also has some input into it. Like what sort of direction do you get from them? Like where does that division sit?
So yeah, I'm curious too, because I wanted to add to that, like when they give direction to, because like you mentioned the sound, like getting mics and stuff like that, like does that come from, do they help out with that? Like how does this all, where's the delineation?
So in terms,
go ahead, Ben. Please.
I was going to say, in terms of the content itself, they have been largely hands off. So when getting the hotel, getting the venue, organizing the food, all of the actual logistics of putting together the event, that's when we reach out to them. That's when we get support. That's when they manage the contracts with the hotels themselves. And then it's the really heart of the conference. So putting out information about the CFTs, that really fell on us. Reviewing the CFTs, deciding who gets to speak and what they're speaking about at the conference, that falls on the local committee. And so they are basically giving this huge amount of infrastructure, and then we're the ones who are sort of filling the house.
Okay.
Nice. You get to pretty much focus on the bits that make it special and unique to your area, and you get to, as well as like cultivating the actual creative aspects, which are the talks and training and things like that. And then, so I guess OWASP probably has like some legal team, or that team, like probably somebody with like a legal background who reviews those contracts and deals with that stuff. So do they, so like you said, the food, the hotel, presumably
the website,
the website, AV, all that stuff, that's all OWASP.
Yeah, it's part of the contract. There is a OWASP AV project. I'm not 100% sure that project is going to do the recordings for the DC conference, but in 2016 the hotel, as part of the hotel contract, provided all the AV, and then the OWASP project did all of the recordings that we were able to post on YouTube and all that. So that, that's something to take into consideration. There are plenty of companies out there that can be hired to do that for you, the recording and all of that, instead of having it be volunteer based. It just depends on what your project budget is, or I should say your conference budget. The other thing that I want to note is, in 2016, that's not the structure.
Right.
In 2016, the structure was basically the majority of everything fell on the local chapter, and it was exhausting. And when they approached us about doing 2019, we all needed to make sure that model wasn't going to be repeated, because I don't think there would be many people who would have it in them to do all that. So they said, basically, like as Ben had mentioned, that they organized, they did all the top level organization, the marketing, the handling of the sponsorships, and left the local chapter to kind of focus on the meat and potatoes of the conference.
What's the average time investment for the two of you week by week, on like a week by week basis, at both, compared to, like, contrasted against 2016 and then what it is now?
Abdullah, you got to talk about 2016. I wasn't on the committee then.
2016 was a lot. It was I don't know. It was a lot of work every single week. The thing of it is that the conference kind of has an ebb and flow. There are periods of time where you're not doing much because things are too far out, or another member of the committee is handling something, and so there's really nothing for you to do. But as the conference draws near, things just kind of ramp up. And then it's kind of the day of. I remember being at the conference the entire week and getting little to no sleep because we were in the tracks handling everything, and then helping with early morning setup and tear downs in the evenings as well. And so we were living at the hotel, kind of helping with that. So I suspect that part of it, but I think in general, it's less stressful this time around just because a lot of those things are handled. Like Ben and I didn't need to be involved in searching for a venue. That was all kind of decided and ironed out. And we're not going to need to be involved in those types of decisions, which helps us focus.
And we did give them suggestions of good venues in the area, but we didn't go to them personally. We didn't interact with their POCs at those various hotels. So we didn't really do that part of the work. We just provided, here are a list of really good potentials.
Nice. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not too bad now.
No. So right now we are in the thick of CFP, CFT reviews, as both of you guys know.
Yeah. He says that because we're like, well, I'll take the hate mail. I'm dealing with that. I'm on the committee to help approve. So if your stuff gets rejected, blame Abdullah, not me.
But it's at CK Tricky on Twitter. DMs are open.
It's Abdullah, Ben, and Seth's fault, and nobody but them.
So we're dealing with that, and then go ahead, Seth.
No, I was just going to say, you're dealing with kind of the CFP or the CFPs and the CFTs now, like rating them. So we're going to start. I'm sure we'll see a ramp up here pretty quick as far as marketing goes and everything else. Mm-hmm. What is it that you guys are looking forward to with this conference, right? I know you've seen some of the CFPs and things like that, but in general, what is it that you like about it?
Ben?
Honestly, I'm just trying to put on the best conference that I can. I mean, there are a couple of individual talks in there that I definitely want to kind of set aside and carve out a slot to watch them, just because there's something which I might have only cursory knowledge in, or it might be like a really deep dive into something that I'm interested in. But aside from that, I mean, I just enjoy being at these conferences and just hearing what some of the top researchers are doing and what kind of groundbreaking information is available. So I'm going to be trying to host this and manage it as best I can, and at the same time also be my own attendee.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as we're getting towards the end of the episode, can you guys tell us a little bit? Let's promote AppSec DC. Let's talk about global. I almost said AppSec. Global AppSec DC. So, when is it running? Keynotes, all the relevant information.
All right. So our website is up right now. It's dc.globalappsec.org. Registration is expected to open on July 8th. We are in the middle of the CFP CFT review process. So unfortunately, if you have a paper, it's closed right now, so you can't really submit. But there are other conferences. Like you said, the AppSec Amsterdam is open through the end of the month. So if you want to try and get a trip out there. Abdullah mentioned that we have keynotes. We have James Wickett, Carolyn Wong, Vandana Verma, government keynote, and we're just trying to bring in as many people as we can and also play off our own local speakers as well to try and get as interesting talks for everyone.
There's the one thing I'll add, the thing that I'm really excited about. So based upon the submissions, we've been toying around with a invite track which is pretty different from what we've typically done in the past for OWASP conferences. This invite track is going to be individuals within various industries that they can kind of speak upon their experiences of the AppSec challenges that they face that's unique to them, and also kind of look forward to challenges that they can kind of see coming for them, and really what they as industry leaders, what they really need out of us as a community. And so and these are going to be super senior people. It's a thing where typically people like that wouldn't submit to a CFP. And so we're trying to get that invite track up. Once again, we're trying to sort that out based upon the submissions for the CFPs. But at least we would like to have a few individuals kind of come and give those types of talks to kind of help us just in general as a community better understand what we need to do.
Yeah.
Awesome. And it looks like Ben, you started. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to type out the answer. So in the chat window, there was somebody asking how does the blind review work, and it's much easier if I just say it.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit different for the CFPs versus CFTs, where the CFPs, it's completely blind. So all we have is an abstract and a detailed outline. And then based off that, we read it, review it, try and group it according to a general category. And then there's 6 different ratings per, it's either 6 or 7 per the CFPs, where each reviewer will give it a score, and that score ranks from it's more specific than this, but it ranks from a -3 points to +3 points. And so depending on the content in there, how well thought out the CFP is and how well the information is conveyed, that would obviously be ranked higher. And then based on that, all of the CFPs, after it's reviewed by your 4 or 5 people, then it will have its own scoring system. And then we'll try and prioritize that and use that to determine what talks are rated the highest by the various reviewers.
Yeah, the top X amount of talks will get accepted.
Right. And then it's completely blind. So I know, Abdullah, in one of the cases you kind of recognized based on the content that you thought, you knew who it was, who that speaker was, and so you asked yourself to be removed from that personal review. Yeah. But other than that, we have no idea whose CFP we're reviewing.
And so you said the process is a little different for the CFTs, the trainings, right?
Yeah.
And is there a specific reason for that?
It's just a different format, and there's a lot more content included. So it's not quite as blind. So you can see the trainer's name. Sometimes they'll have an attached document with like the entire slide deck. So there's a lot more to review within a training itself than just a 1-hour talk. So you can't really get a good understanding for what the training will consist of based on like a 1 paragraph and then a couple of bullet points. So you really need to dig into a little bit deeper of what specifics will be included, what types of labs there might be, screenshots if they uploaded the slide deck, and then for trainers, honestly, it is a little bit important to know who you're dealing with and to know whether or not what their training background is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to put that into perspective. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Seth. I keep doing it. I'm sorry. My bad.
You're fine. Go ahead. You said for that.
Well, no. I was just gonna say, like, when you've got, let's say, 30 potential speakers, and you've got a ticket that's like when you're buying a ticket, let's say it's 500,000, whatever it is. So you've got your ticket to the conference. You can choose. You can look at the tracks. You can see the speakers. You can choose who you want to go see. When you buy a ticket for training, usually that's a few thousand dollars. It's just that one training, and you're going to sit there for 2 or 3 days, maybe one day, but usually 2 or 3 days. So I'm putting my opinion out on this, but my opinion is you do need to vet. I don't think it makes sense to do a blind review on call for training, because I want to make sure that I have somebody who's quality trainer. I know that if you've never given training at other conferences, you have no references, that makes it a little bit difficult. But yeah, you can definitely. What's that?
Oh, I was going to say not necessarily. I mean, the content, more so than anything else, the content really speaks for itself. And yes, obviously somebody who is well vetted, who, you know, gives trainings at Black Hat, all these OWASPs, all these B-sides, all these various conferences would, you know, be worthwhile. But just because somebody gives talks and included reviews from conferences doesn't necessarily mean that they might be rated higher.
Oh, sure, yeah. And that's not where I was kind of going with it. What I was going to say, I'm not talking about getting people to buy the tickets or getting approved. What I mean more so is the delivery, like more so, is it enjoyable? Like if you got through the process, great, cool. But if you're giving training, like the content, yeah, the content's important, but I'll tell you firsthand, I think as like I say this because I've been a bad trainer before. I've been new to training and I've given stuff that I'm not super proud of before, mainly because I just didn't have the experience, and you learn. And I think we had Jim on, or I know we had Jim on, but I think it was Jim. I'm pretty sure it was Jim that said, you know, his training is definitely, there's like a focus on education, but there's also that focus on entertainment. Like there has to be, to keep people engaged. So anyways, that's my kind of take on like why training should be well vetted, because you're, again, paying a lot of money to somebody you're going to spend a couple of days with. You would hope that they've got good delivery.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, I think that's basically the answer to the questions. But again, so AppSec DC or Global AppSec DC. See, I do the same thing, right? It's what are the dates on that? It's September 9th through the 13th.
Yes.
So watch for the registration. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
The training is the 9th through the 11th, and then the conference itself is the 12th and 13th.
Yeah, cool. And then like the global AppSec events are always really good. You know, in general, I think there's quite a few talks that have been submitted, right? You know, like having run some like smaller local conferences, that's always the question, is how good is the content that is submitted? And it's hard when you've only got 10 speaking slots and you only get like 12 papers submitted, right? Like you're like accepting 90% or 95% of the submissions. You don't always quite get that quality content that you can get when you have, you know, 50 speaking slots and you get 200 submissions, right? Just the quality is different. But yeah, so look forward to it. Obviously, Ken and I are both, you know, planning on being there. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, thanks for coming on the show today. Like, it's been super interesting to talk about all the things. I know we're, you know, about 15 minutes over, and that seems to be par for the course. And we'll keep promoting as it gets closer, though. Ken, did you have anything else?
No, just definitely had a comment from one of the viewers, and had mentioned that it's a slippery slope to think like that. And so I was just gonna say, like, we can. I'm happy to discuss that further. And if you have thoughts, we can bring it up on the next podcast and kind of respond to any thoughts, because, you know, you may not agree with sort of my take on it. Totally fine. Willing to have that conversation. But again, I want to just clarify, like, well, I don't think I need to. I think that was a fully thought out version, you know, on the training. Does anybody like have any, before we jump off, I'm curious, like what, because like it got a little quiet. I'm curious what other people's opinions are. Is it wrong for me to be like, nah, I want a quality speaker, like, or a quality trainer? And sometimes you can only get that through, like, I don't know how to do it without references other than, you know, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard because it's not like somebody that hasn't had the opportunity to give training yet, right? Like, they may have content that's very good. But like you said, Ken, with the whole hey, half of teaching is actually entertainment, right?
Yeah.
Keeping people engaged. You may have the most compelling topic in the world, but if the delivery slips, it's very difficult to actually teach that to someone else.
Yeah.
And, just because you have a good grasp of, or you have a good understanding of the topic, doesn't mean that you can teach it to somebody else. That's definitely a different skill set than, doing some sort of web application assessment or, mobile assessment or anything like that. So I agree, but I don't know what the best way is to actually find the people that are good at teaching. Right?
Yeah. So I mean, when reviewing the CFTs, I can tell you that, my focus has been, how fleshed out are the ideas, and is the outline really matching? How well is it matching the topic that they're trying to teach? So if they're trying to teach like mobile security, right, or mobile pen testing, and they spend, it looks like from the outline, they're just touching upon one or two of the hardcore tools that you could spend days on itself, I'm going to be a little bit less inclined to rate them that high because, it just kind of seems like they're glazing over certain topics that they really should be covering in depth when they're trying to portray that they're going to deliver a type of training. So from understanding the content that's trying to be delivered, that's kind of what I look to make sure that the training is fully fleshed out, that it's fully thought out, that it's going to be adequate, and that the people that are paying all this money are going to get as much as they can out of it. That they will walk away, if it's a web app pen testing course, they're going to walk away and really be able to say, yeah, okay, cool, I learned a bunch of things, and I can go and do web app pen testing decently well now.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's a huge disagreement there, Ken. I think it's more it's hard to figure out who's an actual good trainer, right? I think from a CFT in general, all you kind of get is whether or not the topic is completely fleshed out and whether or not it makes sense. You can kind of go do some research on the person and actually see where they've done trainings in the past, if that is helpful. But at the same time, I don't want to put too much into that because there are those in the industry, or there are those that you want to give the opportunity to. So maybe, if it's somebody that's never trained before, we don't give them a 3-day course right off the bat, right? We stick with a 1-day course to actually see how it works. And if they shine there, then it's naturally going to be expanded, I guess. Or if they've given a lot of talks in the past and the talks are engaging, it's more likely that they're going to be engaging as a trainer. I think there's other things that you can look at outside of, hey, they've given a training in the past and that's the only thing that we're rating that on.
Yeah, so there's also feedback. I mean, you got to remember that, right? So from an attendee perspective, we look at those reviews. We look at the reviews for every talk. We look at the reviews for every training. And so if there's a trainer, if somebody paid money and the trainer once again said, oh, we're going to teach mobile security, and it was a complete waste of time, we see that feedback, and that absolutely goes into account in the future when at least our committee is going to review a submission by that person again.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes.
Yeah, back. I mean, and honestly, I'd love to hear, so you've got you've got the Slack channel for Absolute AppSec. You've got our email if you want to do it a little more privately. Our email is absoluteappsec@gmail.com. You can tweet us if you want to do it publicly too. It's whatever. But if you have some doesn't matter if you agree, disagree, or if you're just saying here's some other ideas for eliminating, because the point is to eliminate bias, is it not? And I think that Nancy, she brought up a good point, which is that that we want to eliminate. I think that's part of the goal, right? Is eliminating bias by not necessarily saying who is the trainer. So if you have thoughts on how to do that, how to eliminate bias without, introducing a potentially not so great training, or if you have any other thoughts on this, tweet at us, hit us up on Slack, leave comments in the video, however you decide to do it, email us. but reach out for sure, because we definitely would like the input. So, Seth, anything else?
Nope, I don't think so. Catch us online. And obviously, we'll continue the discussion next week. I don't even know who's on next week, Ken.
I don't know either. Let me look. Actually, next week is currently going to be us. So that would be a perfect time to circle back to this and sort of discuss some things, discuss that topic. And there's some other topics I know we wanted to delve into. We haven't done just a you and I in a while. So it's,
Cool. So it'll be us arguing as usual. Good.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, thanks again to Abdullah and Ben. Thanks for joining us. Good luck, flushing out the rest of Global AppSec DC, and we're looking forward to it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Guys.
Thank you to the viewers.
Thank you for letting us on.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Take care. Bye.